You're listening to Up an Octave, a podcast by Sonivia, the podcasting agency that believes that women and non-binary people deserve to take up space in the podcasting industry because our thoughts, voices, and stories matter. Here you'll learn how to make dope podcasts that inspire, educate, convert, and most importantly, make your voice shine. I'm your host, Rue Spence, and I'm here to take podcasting up an octave. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Up an Octave. Today, I am passing the mic to Megan and Max from MediaVerse Unwrapped podcast. Wow, that was a tongue twister. There's a lot of M's going on. I so thoroughly enjoyed getting to talk to Megan and Max about their show, about their Facebook community, which is ginormous if you're not a part of it. They have almost 50,000 members. So you're going to want to hear about this thriving community that they have, how they've navigated some not so great online interactions, and how they're holding space and creating a non-toxic community of nerds, superfans, geeks like me. I got to nerd out a little bit on some of my favorite superhero-y things, and we just had a wonderful conversation about representation and how to create a community that doesn't suck. Buckle up, enjoy this Pass the Mic episode with Max and Megan of MediaVerse Unwrapped, a podcast. Max and Megan, welcome to Up an Octave. I am so thrilled to have you here.
Thank you. We're so happy to be here.
Yeah, we're so thrilled. Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. So you guys are pretty awesome. You host MediaVerse Unwrapped, a Marvel podcast. So for anyone who has not heard of you before, I can give a little background, but I'm sure you guys do it better. Can you tell me about your show?
Yeah, of course. So we love to cover everything Marvel Cinematic Universe, comic book, nerd culture. We cover a wide variety of topics. We love to get down and dirty in theories. We love hosting discussions with our members and sharing their thoughts. We love to discuss rumors, any theories, any other little tidbits about that. We're all about the MCU. We break down movies. We break down the TV shows. We're all about it. And that's pretty much the basis of our show.
I discovered actually Megan in a Facebook group, and that was when you guys were breaking down season 2 of Loki, which, wow, that's a lot to cover.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God.
I immediately was drawn in by the approach that you have, and you guys have a mega Facebook group as well that is affiliated with your brand. But you do it in a way that doesn't feel exclusionary or toxic. And I know that curating that feeling in your group and on your show is huge for you. Can you guys talk a little bit about what you do to maintain that and why that's important to you?
Well, Max and I both, we have dealt with that toxicity in the fandom, whether it be we hear MCU or something is woke because it's a gay character, a female character. So we wanted our own space that we could be nerds and not apologize for it. And that's exactly what we've done with our Facebook group, MediaVerse Comics Unwrapped. We work tirelessly, of course, with our team to ensure that there's no toxicity, no racism, no homophobia, no transphobia, nothing. And we really wanted that to also reflect on our podcast. So we do what we can to be completely inclusive of everything, whether it be a female-driven movie or a gay character or a Black character, a trans character. We love them all. And we just want to see a change in the fandom.
Piggybacking off of what Megan said, when you look into subject matter like what we like to cover on our podcast and what we talk about in our group, a lot of times you see people in the comments just like going crazy, very negative. And when you see one person with like that positive response, they start getting attacked and ripped to shreds because they happen to like something. And we wanted to create a space that you could feel safe to express yourself without being jumped in the comment section. And we wanted everybody to feel represented and everybody's opinions to feel important and heard, because it's so difficult out like in the wilds of the internet. So that's really where our group came from and where it's flourished.
I think that that's so valuable. I have always been a nerdy girl, video games, comics, you name it. And I have run into so many of those, oh, you're a fan. Are you a real fan? What were the winning lottery numbers in Wyoming? the day that Iron Man came out. And it's like, bro, like, what are you even talking about? It's like, oh yeah, well, I'm only 20 years old and I've loved Iron Man since 1964. And it's like, bro.
Yeah.
Like it's so
accurate.
toxic. And I feel like the podcasting space in many ways is not dissimilar. That there's kind of that elitism that comes with a mask of machismo.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Have you guys found that to be true in the podcasting space?
100%.
I've seen a lot of it in, podcasting groups where you're asking for help or something, and you'll see people just belittle someone's idea or belittle their podcast subject, or I don't get it. It's not a competition. We're not here to hurt each other. I really don't understand it.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's I mean, we've had experiences with bigger podcasting platforms and whatnot stealing our content and not like disregarding us because we have a smaller following and just different things like that we've experienced. It's been a wild ride to say the least, but definitely a fun one that we're still embarking on and learning every day.
Yeah.
That's awful to hear. So I want to start out with, I'm sorry. So you guys have been at the podcasting game since March. Is that correct?
Yes.
So almost a year. And so you guys have had content be stolen. Are you comfortable speaking on what happened with that a little bit?
Oh, yes, we are. We have an entire YouTube dedicated.
Yeah, exactly.
This past year was D23, which is a big convention in Florida for Disney. And, Disney owns Marvel. So Max spent his own money to go and no one else did. None of these big pages did because they were told that there wasn't going to be any Marvel content there. So Max still went because Max likes a good time. They went there and they showed the first 10 minutes of Loki season 2?
Yes, the first 10 minutes.
Yeah. So they locked it down. Phones were not allowed. There were security there to make sure no one recorded it. And Max got to see it. So if you were not in that room, you didn't see it. So a bigger company, I'm not sure if we're saying the name or not, a bigger company was not there. And it was adamantly obvious that they were not there. So Max put out the content. He tweeted it. He said he was there covering it for our group and our podcast. And lo and behold, they stole everything from him. They stole his theories word for word. They stole maybe his pictures. We're not quite sure yet. They stole everything. And we never got a shout out. We never got credit for any of it, which, we were like, well, that sucks. We didn't even get to report on it yet because we didn't have time to cover it because it was a whole weekend event. So after that, we were like, we don't know what to do. We're not that big. So you kind of just feel kind of hit down. And then other people started reaching out, people who worked with this company, people who are working with this company, other people who have nothing to do with this company, but were also stolen from. We got so much support. A lot of it was private support because NDAs were signed. So we got a really good look on the background of what's actually gone on with this huge company that steals all their content and doesn't cite sources. But for us, we cite every single source. We make it known that we do. Because like I said, it's not a competition. We're not here to best one another. We just want to be in the fandom. And so that happened. And that went on for probably a month that we just kept getting people responses telling us that they also were stolen from.
Yeah. And we even reached out to them to kind of clear the air, see what it was. And Megan had reached out to them several times, completely ignored us each time. And the funny thing is that it was just so painfully obvious they had stolen from because they copied my own personal thoughts, my own personal theories based on what I witnessed. And like Megan said, there was no representative from that company was there. It was a closed room, locked. Disney had it locked down. They had people monitoring the audience to make sure no one had their phones out. It was very exclusive. And it just word for word was stolen from us. And, it's not about sharing content. I mean, we're all inspired by each other.
Mm-hmm.
It was the fact that that they had such a big platform they were taking from us. And then on top of that, we were getting all this because when we started talking about it, at first it was kind of like a joke. We were like, oh, someone kind of stole what we talked about. And then we started getting all of this support from ex-employees of this company talking about how there was all kinds of craziness behind the scenes, having to deal with like misogyny and racism and other things going on behind the scenes, in addition to them stealing content. And we decided to do it kind of an expose on them on our podcast. So if anyone's listening and interested in seeing that, we do have an episode dedicated to it. I don't want to discuss like the actual name or anything on here, but if you're interested, like, we have a whole entire episode dedicated to it. But it kind of like opened our eyes to what we were getting ourselves into in this space. And, we've seen it in comment sections. We've seen it in Facebook groups. We've seen it other places on the internet, but that was our first kind of foray into like this space where our podcast was being dragged into it, and we were seeing it in this arena. So it was very eye-opening. It was very surprising, but it taught us a lot of valuable lessons, I'll say. So we've definitely come out stronger, and we've learned how to handle these things going forward.
Also, what really pissed us off the most was that we looked up to them. They were the goal for us, where we wanted to be. And then they did that, and it's like, why? All you had to do was shout us out. That's it. Cite your sources. You can be changing someone's life if you have that big of a platform. I just don't get the selfishness. It's just so disappointing.
It's a lot of gatekeeping.
Yeah.
It definitely is. That's an absolutely terrible experience for sure. And I'm sure that, having this experience and being in the position that you are with the other, former employees to almost be a whistleblower in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's really powerful. But my God, that's a heck of an intro into this, because you guys were like little baby podcasters when this is going on. So I'm sure that that's informed how you handle your IP moving forward, your intellectual property. What has that informed for you moving forward? And what would you recommend to people who are baby podcasters right now so that they don't find themselves in a similar position?
It's a very good question.
Watermark everything.
Everything.
Keep your eyes and ears on the ground.
For sure.
If you see a bigger company, because they all do it. Turns out this wasn't the only one. If you hear something, say something, because you could be standing up for people who signed NDAs, who still work there, who are getting mistreated every day, and they can't say anything. We had people thank us because we spoke about it. We said something, we brought attention to it. And, there were blogs written about it. Reddit was all over it. And these people who really did go through it with the company and the head of the company, or they just never met him and just got stolen from, they were too afraid to come out and say something. They were afraid of a lawsuit. They were afraid of that they could just bury them because they were that much bigger. So don't be afraid to just say something, because if they stole from you and you can prove it, they can't do anything. They stole from you. That's your stuff. You worked hard on that. Just take that chance. Just go for it.
That's really powerful to have that permission to stand up for yourself. Were you at all afraid of this much bigger and probably wealthier company having any kind of lawsuit against you or taking any action against you?
No. I mean, Max was.
The thought crossed my mind, because you never know. I feel like in today's world, people can be very sue happy, like in multiple different scenarios. A lot of people can feel like that's kind of the way to go for any little thing. But I did, and I kind of had my reservations about it. But I always said to Megan, as long as we're quoting our sources properly and we are doing our due diligence with our research, and we're making sure that these things are factual and that they can be easily checked by anyone who wants to just do a quick little Google search, I feel like, we're covering our bases. We're not saying anything that's untrue. We're not saying anything that could be pertained to as malicious, because, I mean, the writing was on the wall. It was very apparent they stole from us. It was very obvious because they used word for word what I had written. So they really couldn't go and say that we were, trying to discredit us in any way, I guess was what I'm trying to say. So I just told Megan, as long as we have our bases covered, we shouldn't have any problem at all. But we should definitely speak out, because it became a lot bigger than just us, So it was very important that we did at least address it properly and, and give a full picture of what was going on without betraying our sources.
That's just so lazy.
Oh
my gosh.
Exactly.
Make your own stuff.
They have people at this company who are getting paid to do this. What are they getting paid for? We're doing this for free.
It's just us.
Yeah. So that also brings up another point that I want to talk about with now that we're kind of in this legal conversation. You guys talk about Marvel, which is, as we mentioned, owned by Disney, who is also sometimes thought to be maybe a little bit too happy with not using their characters or licenses to promote yourself, basically. So have you had to tread lightly as you talk about some of these things to not get in hot water?
So far, no.
There's different things you have to look out for. We are not worried about Marvel or Disney because, we're not stealing their property. Everything they're putting out to the public, and we have the right to discuss it. We're in the fandom. We haven't stolen any pictures or anything. I was always worried about, because we have a YouTube. I thought maybe YouTube would take some pictures or videos down based on the thumbnail, but it still hasn't happened. So kind of going to hope that keeps going.
Yeah. I mean, we're all, like I said before, we always like to cover our bases. We're always making sure that if we're using something that's not ours, we credit the source. And most of what we discuss on our podcast, a lot of it is, opinion. It's, we're giving context to, to their projects. And in reality, it's kind of like free advertising for them. So, I mean, we cover various topics, but we never, use anything that's not ours. We never, we're not playing music or anything like that doesn't belong to us. We're always making sure that we're doing things properly.
Yeah, that's a great way to make sure that you're on top of things, because I know that some people want to start shows like this, but they're afraid of, seeing that, oh, this content is copyrighted or whatever. And I know that fear of accidentally doing something wrong is sometimes worse than like the actual follow through of, yeah, you used a picture, you credited it, move on. But I think that there's so much fear because, like you mentioned earlier, we are kind of in like a sue happy climate where a lot of people are like thinking that people are ready to take action against them. So I think that that's great to bring that up because I love the fan cast. I think in some ways the fan cast is really like the origin of podcasting. Podcasting as an art form really started as people in a basement talking about something they loved.
Yeah.
For sure.
So what was your motivation to start your show? Because the Facebook group came first. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, the Facebook group came first. And a lot of it was just opportunity, really, because we were looking for ways to grow. We were looking for ways to expand. And, some opportunities with Facebook and their parent group Meta came up. We were accepted into their community accelerator program for this last round that they did, which was amazing. And they invested in us and our group. They believed in our concept. And they were giving us the means to create a project that would help us to, reach more people, to expand, to grow, like the next steps, after a Facebook group, like what do you do? We wanted to create something that would give the message that we tried to always perpetuate in our Facebook group of inclusivity and non-toxicity. We wanted to give that a voice. And so Megan and I decided, like, what if we start a podcast? Like we're, people like us, who aren't traditionally accepted in these spaces, right? Megan is a female. I'm gay. Not always the friendliest place for people like us to, express our thoughts or to, to converse like normal, not normal fans, but just like a typical fan would, like, with friends or whatever. We wanted a space to be like heard, to have our opinions broadcast and for us to kind of share and to also have our group be incorporated as well. Because a lot of what we do on our show is that we have our members come in and they give us their opinions. They give us their thoughts. They give us, their own reactions to things, which we love to read and we love to discuss and it kind of grew from that whole thing of wanting to make sure that, the marginalized communities that we represent had a voice, had something to listen to that was, non-toxic and positive. And that's where a lot of it came from, I'll say.
Like you said, we were looking to grow, and Max and I, we have a really close friendship. So we always knew whatever we did, it would be together, something we could both do. And this just made the most sense. And I couldn't pick a better person to do this with, honestly.
Oh, same. Megan's the best. I couldn't do this without her, and I wouldn't do it without her.
Same.
As you guys, you got a little bit of an investment from Meta, it sounds like, to get started. You one day said, okay, let's do this. Let's start a podcast. Then what? How did you get started? Did you feel overwhelmed when you were getting started? What did that process look like for you?
It was overwhelming.
More than we expected, I think.
Yeah, because the only experience we have in podcasts is listening to them. We had no idea that there was so much more. and so much editing and so much promotion. It's like a full-time job.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. So we learned a lot. We had an editor. He helped us with an episode or two, and then he tried to teach us, and we did not absorb any of that. So we just kind of went for it. And it took a long time to find our groove, but I think we found it, and we're pretty comfortable now.
Those first episodes are hard. It's nice to hear that you had some help, because I think so often people start out just completely alone, just winging it. And that can be kind of like trying to shuffle through a dark room. So having a little bit of that expert insight is a big win. How did you decide on the format? Because you guys do video as well. How did you decide what format felt right for your content?
Truthfully, at first, it was really just like ease because, I mean, having to do audio and video, it can be very daunting because they're two completely separate mediums that you have to kind of take into account, like how the audience views it, how, you come off, different things like that. So we started with audio. We are now starting to transition to a lot more video. And it's been a learning curve for sure, but we're taking it step by step, I'd say. And Megan's handling the video beautifully. I handle a lot of the audio stuff, and we try to piece it together. We work together. We're very collaborative. We're truly the best of partners. Where if Megan ever needs help, I jump in and we'll look something up together. We'll learn how to do it together. We're definitely in this together.
Yeah.
And it's just we learn something new every single day. I feel like whenever we're working on this, just something new comes up, and we figure out how to do it, and we get it done for sure.
Having that collaborative space, I feel like is such a win, because it can be so much when you're like, I have no one to even vent to. Like, if you are not in community with other podcasters, you're like, I could tell my friends about this and they'd look at me like I grew another head. So it's nice that you guys at least have each other to run screaming to.
Yes.
Yes. Oh my
God.
God.
That is majority of what we do is vent to each other.
Oh my God, it's crazy, but it's so true. It is nice having a partner that you're going through this together with, because like you said, it's like you try to talk to your friends about this, right? And who barely even know how to listen to a podcast, and they're just like, oh, okay, sure, sounds good. They don't have like no idea what you're saying. But like then I just run to Megan, and she's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. Let's do this, and this, and it's nice to have like that sounding board and that person you can go to just like scream into a pillow with,
Yes.
And we mentioned earlier that it can almost feel like a full-time job. How do you guys divide out the other tasks? And do you feel like having such a big Facebook group has helped you, or has it added more to your plate?
So usually we have, Max does the editing of the audio and I do the video. We didn't like really cut it down the middle. It was more like, do you want to do this and I'll do this? Or I really suck at this. Can you do this instead? Or look, I don't want to do it either, but I'll do it. And other small tasks were like, I'm working right now. Are you able to handle this? And then it just kind of stuck. And like I said, we got into this groove that we're pretty comfortable now.
Yeah, it definitely is a second job because I work a full-time job and I do my podcast, and it feels like I'm working two jobs for sure, especially with our Facebook group because managing such a large membership base, Megan handles a lot of that, and she does such a beautiful job, and it's a fine balance act, and she handles it with poise always. But yeah, that's the best thing about our partnership is like we know each other's weaknesses and strengths, and we definitely like work towards those for sure.
Yeah, agreed.
Sounds like there's a lot of like division of labor by rock, paper, scissors. Like, I don't want to do this, you do it.
I mean, yes, basically.
So if you were to sit down with someone, pretend that whoever is on the other side of these microphones is either a woman or a queer person who is thinking about starting a podcast, knowing all that you have absorbed in the last almost year and all the crazy stuff that you have had to endure, what advice would you have for that person? Megan, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, I would say just go for it. The worst that can happen is that someone gives you a thumbs down on an app. You'll be fine. Whatever you want to talk about, just do it. So there's someone out there who wants to listen to what you have to say. Even if you think you're the only one that thinks it. Someone out there is going through stuff that you're also going through. So you could really be a light in someone's life.
That's absolutely so true. And I feel like there's so much pressure that we put on ourselves. We're definitely our toughest critics.
Oh, yeah.
that, it's like, oh my God, what if people don't like it? Or what if I embarrass myself? What if I'm cringe? Because that's the worst thing we can possibly be. That it's okay to embarrass yourself. It's okay to not be perfect and to try. I think that that's like the funniest thing that's come out of TikTok for me is how many comments on videos are, I've never had an original thought. Because it's so true. There are so many things that you're like, oh, I am the only weirdo in the world who does this thing. And then there are like swaths of people that come out of the woodwork to be like, oh my God, I thought I was the only person who did this thing.
Yes.
That I so agree that similarly to what you were talking about with the people who still like have active NDAs, you don't know who you're being the first person to stand up and say, even if it's like something embarrassing about yourself, that, hey, am I the only person who this? That if you're the first voice who opens up about that, you don't know what barriers and boundaries you could be breaking down for other people who are experiencing that in silence.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Honestly, it's so much about starting your own podcast is about putting yourself out there. And that's something that I personally was uncomfortable with at first. But honestly, the best advice I can give is just to stay strong and to realize, on the internet, not everybody is going to like you. But to the point that you made is that those weird things that we think about ourselves, that like those things that make us cringe about ourselves, we have to remember one thing. You're always so much more hypercritical on yourself than anyone is on you. I mean, we're all kind of in our own stories. A lot of the time, something that I might be self-conscious of, nobody else even notices. So it's just, you got to take the leap. You've got to try. And, sometimes those things that make you different are what make you special, what make your perspective important, and are what other people may want to listen to you for, because they may think something different, or they may think that your perspective is interesting because they've never heard anything like it before. So, never be afraid to just be that weirdo, to just go out of your comfort zone and just kind of you got to push yourself. If it's something you're really passionate about, you'll make it happen.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And so just, I guess, as we wrap up, I would love to hear how you have navigated pushback that you've gotten, because being in the nerd space, being a woman, being a gay person, I am sure that you guys have had trolls or just slimy people slide in by accident that you've had to dispatch. What do you do to navigate some of those uncomfortable conversations with those people who do not fit the heart of what your mission is with the group and with the podcast?
So I like to fight with people. So if it's
See, that's true.
yeah, so if it's in the group, it's a respectful disagreement. If it's outside the group and catch me on the wrong day, I'm gonna hurt your feelings, depending on what you say to me. But the most I've heard is like, we don't want to hear your woke content, or I don't want to hear about Captain Marvel. It's the MCU. And you just kind of tell them to get bent or grow up. Yeah, you get called a snowflake every now and then, but it's like, I like snowflakes. That's all right.
Yeah. The first thing I usually do is I go complain to Megan first. And that's the
True.
first thing I do. That's the first thing I do. The second thing is, a lot of the time, I mean, depending on what it is, a lot of it's just like people shouting into the void of the internet and just like spewing hateful nonsense and just not caring about where it goes. A lot of the time, I just tend to ignore it because I feel like it's usually just like bitter people online. And when you start fueling that fire, it like gets them more like into it and makes them like happy someone's responding to them. So depending on the situation, I'll like tend to, just kind of let it go and just ignore them and let them disappear. But, if it's something like someone coming for our credibility or someone coming for, something that we're saying, I always like to fight fire with facts. And I always like to say, well, you know what? This is how we got to this. This is, how we explain this. I mean, if you don't like it after that, you need to do a few Google searches and educate yourself. I mean, that's really all you can do.
This is why I said Max is better with words than me. He's very good at this.
I'm like, fight fire with facts. That is going to be like my triple snap shut you down for like a month. I'm going to ride so high on that. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And it always works. Always. I'm telling you.
That is quippy and so valuable. I mean, that's truly, you cannot disagree with reality. You can try,
Exactly.
but it just kind of makes you look silly. But no, I so appreciate, like I said earlier, that you have this space in comics that we can be little woke snowflakes.
Yeah.
If they're going to call us that, then sure, that's fine. From the same people who can get on board with calling Thor oh, sure, he's a god. Or they can be okay with a talking raccoon that's cyber engineered, and they can, call Peter Parker Peter when he's wearing this outfit, but, then they can call him Spider-Man, but they can't change people's pronouns or names. And it's so bizarre to me what fans of science fiction and fantasy can agree to, and then that can be some of the most closed-minded to real life things. It will always boggle my mind. So I am so grateful that you guys hold that space.
Thank you.
I got into this argument today that someone said it's not possible for Captain Marvel to do this and that and not remember this. And I was like, she's flying through space with a cat on her shoulder. And the biggest part you don't believe is that she's a woman. Get out of here. That's ridiculous. People are nuts.
Oh my gosh.
Those weird little hangups. Yeah.
Yeah.
It harkens back to when they thought women shouldn't ride in trains because it would be too hard on our uteruses.
My God.
I'm like, yeah, that's why she can't fly through space. Her tampon.
Oh my God. It's so true.
I could rant and vent about misogyny for a lot longer than any of us have. So as we wrap up, can you please tell people where they can get more of you?
Yes, definitely. So you can join our non-toxic Facebook group, MediaVerse Comics Unwrapped on Facebook. We have a public page on Facebook, MediaVerse Plus. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, anywhere else at MediaVerse CU. You can follow me at His Name is Max, and Megan at Megan the Gangsta.
That's me.
And then you guys have a podcast, right?
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. So this is how we end every podcast, is with that whole list. And we're not used to actually saying the podcast name at the end.
Oh, God.
I love it.
So you can listen to us on MediaVerse Unwrapped. Glad to have you. We're on every podcasting platform, anywhere you can listen to one too.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you guys so much for coming on and helping me take podcasting up an octave.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. I will be back next week with an episode on how to brand your podcast. A lot of times, I think we forget about this element, that you need a visual and identifiable brand for your show. In the meantime, share this episode with a friend who would absolutely love and vibe with Megan and Max. And while you're here, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you're listening, and drop me a rating or a review, because just like your show, mine needs those to grow. The conversation keeps going, and I share even more podcasting tips and tricks on Instagram at Sonivia Studios, so head on over there. And thanks for helping me take podcasting up an octave.